It had been a quiet evening, just like any other. I finished preparing dinner, waiting for Mark to come home from work, as I always did. Our routine was familiar and comforting. It had been for years. Yet something in the air felt different today. I couldn't place it, but the energy in our home seemed off. As I set the table, I noticed his coat, still hanging by the door, even though it was past the usual time he'd be home. His keys were on the counter. Again, not unusual, but the way they were left there, as if discarded, unsettled me. There was an odd tension in my chest that wouldn't subside, gnawing at me with every passing minute. I had been married to Mark for 5 years. We knew each other like the back of our hands. But lately, small details seemed off. His smiles weren't as frequent, his touch a little less warm, his eyes a little more distant. I tried to shake off the feeling, thinking maybe it was just stress, or maybe I was just overthinking things. But the nagging feeling didn't let up. The last few weeks had been the same. His late hours, the sudden changes in his schedule, his lack of interest in the things that once mattered to both of us. I tried asking, but the answers were always vague. He had been busy at work, or had to meet someone important. I told myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. That day, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I walked into the living room and, for some reason, my eyes fell on his phone. It was lying on the couch, face up. I couldn't resist the urge to glance at it. My heart stopped when I saw a message flash across the screen, from a name I didn't recognize. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a colleague, but my curiosity got the best of me. I picked it up, heart racing, my fingers trembling. I quickly read the text. "Can't wait to see you tonight." The message felt like a punch to the gut, even though I hadn't yet discovered anything concrete. My mind was already racing, piecing things together. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. But everything in me screamed that this was the sign I had been dreading. I tried to steady my breath, trying to calm myself. I set the phone down carefully, as if it might shatter in my hands, and I sat down on the couch, trying to make sense of what was happening. It felt like my entire world was slipping through my fingers. My mind began to replay every small detail, every moment in the last few weeks when I had felt a subtle shift between us. I hadn't wanted to believe it before, but now the truth was too loud to ignore. My heart ached with disbelief.
How could he do this to me?
I wondered. What had happened to the man I thought I knew? Had I really been so blind? The doubts, the questions, the uncertainty. It all crashed into me at once, overwhelming my thoughts and leaving me numb. I stood up abruptly, pacing around the room, trying to get control of my thoughts. Mark had always been the one I could rely on, the person who made me feel safe. But now I was confronted with the possibility that the man I loved, the man I trusted, was capable of breaking that trust in the most painful way possible. The phone lay on the table, its presence almost mocking me. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore the reality that was starting to sink in. His silence had become an answer in itself. The phone, the messages, the distance between us, it was all leading to the same conclusion. I didn't know what to do. The woman in the message, the unspoken truth between us, it all felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I stood there, my mind spiraling, unsure of what to do next. Should I confront him? Should I wait for him to come home and ask him what was going on? Or should I keep it all inside and let the seeds of doubt grow even deeper? Each second felt like an eternity as I wrestled with the decision, with the truth that was now staring me in the face. Would confronting him now bring me the answers I needed? Or would it tear everything apart? I didn't know, but one thing was painfully clear. The trust one had once placed in him was shattered, and nothing could ever be the same again. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine, that I hadn't seen what I had seen. I had to confront him. The thought of waiting, letting him explain away the truth, was unbearable. It was clear now. Something was wrong, and I wasn't going to ignore it any longer. The hours dragged by. Mark wasn't home yet, and the anxiety inside me built up like a pressure cooker, each minute pushing me closer to the inevitable confrontation. My mind kept replaying the message, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt a rising anger. How could he do this to me? How long had it been going on? The betrayal, even in its early stages, felt suffocating. When Mark finally walked through the door, I didn't wait. My words were already hanging in the air, sharp and heavy. I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest, and asked, "Who is she?" My voice was calm, but underneath it, I could feel the tremor of emotion threatening to break free. He froze, his face faltering for just a split second. I watched him, waiting for an explanation that would somehow undo what I had seen. He tried to play it off, as if the question wasn't as loaded as it was. "What are you talking about?" he said, feigning confusion. I could tell by the way he avoided my gaze that he wasn't being honest. But I didn't let him off the hook. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The tension in the room was thick enough to suffocate us both. I repeated the question, and this time, I didn't give him a chance to wiggle out of it. "Who is she, Mark?" "The woman in your messages." "Don't lie to me." The silence stretched between us, thick with uncomfortable truth. Mark ran his hand through his hair, his face flushing as the reality of the moment set in. I could see him trying to think of a way to make it go away, to deny it, but it was too late. The truth had already been planted, and there was no way to pull it out without causing more damage. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and defensive. "It's not what you think," he muttered, clearly trying to downplay it. "It's just someone from work. It didn't mean anything. I was just trying to get away from everything for a while, that's all." I didn't believe him. His words felt hollow, an attempt to brush away the truth, to make it sound less significant than it was. "Trying to get away?" I repeated, the words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. "Is that what this is? An escape?" I shook my head, feeling the raw pain of his betrayal clawing at me. "You're lying, Mark. I don't know why you think I won't see through it, but I do. I can't just pretend that you haven't been sneaking around behind my back. Don't insult me by pretending this is nothing." His eyes flashed with irritation, as though I were the one being unreasonable. "It's not like that. I never meant to hurt you, okay? I swear." I saw the guilt in his eyes then, the cracks in his carefully constructed defenses. But guilt wasn't enough. Guilt didn't erase what had been done. I wanted answers. I wanted to hear him say the words that would shatter everything, the truth that. I spent the night in a daze, too overwhelmed to sleep, too angry to rest. Every time I closed my eyes, Mark's words played over and over in my mind.
Clara.
The name had a strange ring to it, as if it didn't belong in the space he and I had once shared. The realization that he had kept a secret from me for weeks, months perhaps, gnawed at me. I couldn't stop the flood of emotions, betrayal, hurt, confusion. Every moment felt like a punch to the gut, and I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew about us. By morning, I was still exhausted, but the anger had settled in a different part of my chest, an aching, hollow place that felt like a black hole. It was a painful kind of silence that had fallen over our home. Mark had stayed in the other room, leaving me to brood in my thoughts. He hadn't apologized again. He hadn't begged for my forgiveness. In fact, his attempts at reassurance only made things worse. It was clear he wasn't sorry for what he'd done, but for the mess he'd created. I had never felt so alone. He was physically present, but emotionally distant, just like before I found out about Clara. What hurt the most was the way he'd continued to lie to me, to withhold the truth for so long. The cracks in our relationship weren't new. I had just been too blind to see them. The trust one had built my life on was shattered, and in its place was a deep, aching uncertainty. How could I have been so naive? How could I not have seen the signs? I wondered how many times I had ignored my gut instinct, choosing instead to trust the comfortable lies we had built our lives around. The hardest part of all of this was realizing that my love for him hadn't disappeared. It wasn't just the love I'd had when we first met, or the easy love we shared in the beginning, but a deeper, more complicated version of it. Even now, after everything, I still wanted to fix it, to make it better, to go back to how it was before. But that version of us didn't exist anymore. I couldn't simply forget what he had done, and I couldn't pretend that I wasn't feeling the weight of his betrayal. I thought about calling my sister or a friend, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The shame was overwhelming. I didn't want anyone to know what was happening, to see how weak I felt. I didn't want to be pitted. I didn't want to hear people tell me to leave him or that I deserved better because I wasn't sure what I deserved anymore. I was paralyzed by the choice in front of me. I stayed in that limbo for days, lost in my own thoughts, too afraid to confront Mark and too afraid to leave. Every time I looked at him, I saw the man I had loved, the man who had held me when I cried, the one who had made me feel safe. But that man no longer existed. In his place was someone who had broken something precious and didn't know how to fix it. I tried to go through the motions of normal life, cooking dinner, pretending to be interested in the mundane conversations we used to have. But nothing felt real anymore. Every touch, every glance between us, felt like a lie. It wasn't even about Clara anymore. It was about the cracks in our marriage that I had ignored for so long. It was about the years of feeling unseen, of feeling like I was the only one putting in effort. The affair was just the final blow, a confirmation of everything I had been afraid of. I was exhausted, mentally and emotionally. I couldn't keep pretending that things were okay, that we could just go back to the way we were. The guilt that plagued me for even considering leaving him gnawed at me. After all, I had made a vow to stand by him, to be there for him no matter what. But how could I do that now? How could I stand by someone who had broken the very foundation of our relationship? I felt completely lost. There was no map for this kind of pain, no guide for how to heal from betrayal. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep letting him hurt me, no matter how much I loved him. I needed to make a choice that wasn't about what I thought I should do or what I thought was expected of me. It had to be about what was best for me, what would allow me to start healing, to regain some sense of peace. But the decision weighed heavy on me. Could I really walk away from him? Could I let go of everything we had built? Could I forgive him, knowing what he had done? I didn't know. I didn't have the answers. I only knew that I couldn't stay in this limbo forever, that something had to change. The love I had for him was still there, but so was the hurt. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that I needed to choose myself. I needed to stop questioning my worth and whether or not I could forgive him. I needed to figure out how to move forward, whether that meant trying to salvage our relationship or walking away. But I wasn't going to keep putting myself second anymore. The decision hung over me like a storm cloud, one I couldn't ignore any longer. Every moment of hesitation felt like an eternity, as if I was being suffocated by my own indecision. Mark's presence in the house had become a constant reminder of everything I'd lost, my trust, my peace, my sense of security. The love I once felt for him was there, but it was tainted now, muddied by the betrayal I could never erase from my memory. It wasn't that I didn't still care for him. I did, more than I wanted to admit. But the more I thought about everything, the lies, the secrecy, the way he had dismissed my feelings, the more I realized that I couldn't keep pretending everything would be okay. The love I had for him wasn't enough to heal the wounds he'd caused. And I couldn't keep living in this state of limbo, torn between the person I used to love and the person who had hurt me. I spent days thinking, wrestling with a decision that now seemed impossible. Should I stay and try to work through it, or should I leave, cutting ties with the man I had spent so many years with? Every argument in my mind felt like it could justify either choice, but deep down I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of a relationship that had already been shattered. The hardest part was realizing that I had been holding on to something that no longer existed. The man I had loved, the man who had promised to cherish me, was gone. In his place was someone who had betrayed me, someone who had shattered my trust in the worst way possible. And no matter how many times he apologized or promised to change, the truth was that I would never feel safe with him again. I had spent so much time blaming myself, wondering if I had missed the signs, if I had somehow failed him. But the truth was, I couldn't control his actions. His choices were his own, and no amount of second-guessing would change the fact that he had made them. I had to stop allowing his mistakes to dictate my worth, to let go of the guilt that had held me captive for so long. When I finally told him I was leaving, the The weight lifted from my shoulders. It wasn't easy, leaving behind the life I had built with him, the dreams we had shared. But I knew deep down that it was the only way I could move forward. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of his lies, pretending that everything would magically return to normal. Some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed. Mark didn't try to stop me. He apologized again, of course, but I could see the resignation in his eyes. He knew, just as I did, that there was no going back. We were both broken, but the difference was that I was ready to heal, while he was still.